I'm Dr. Robin, and this next question is from Terry, who asks, how does the doctor know what's wrong with me when I go in to see them? Well, it depends on what you're seeing them about, but there's a general system that doctors use called SOAP. Now, that's an acronym where each letter stands for a word. So SOAP means subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. So subjective is your subjective story. It's what you're telling them. So when you tell a doctor what's happening, we can hear a certain pattern that we recognize. Kind of like you can recognize what a dog is compared to a cat or a cow when you don't mix them up, even though they all have 4 legs. So we watch for certain patterns in the story you're telling that give us some pretty good clues about what it is that's going on. But the next part is we have to check out if those clues match up with what's really happening in your body. So that's where the objective part comes from. Objective means the things that we can personally see with our own eyes or hear with our ears or in some way check and see if it's actually happening. So that would be when doctors look in your ears, listen to your lungs, check your oxygen levels, get an x-ray. So depending on what the situation is, we'll get more clues that we can use to kind of go with the story you're telling us to let us know what's happening. So if you tell us about your ear hurting and your nose being stuffy and you having a fever, well, that tells us you could have an ear infection, or it could be just that your ear is full of snot from your cold, but it's not an infection that needs antibiotics. So that's where we look in your ear and we can see. If we see in your ear that it's all red and nasty and there's all this stuff behind your ear that's super gross, you might need an antibiotic to get rid of that. On the other hand, if we look in there and there's clear liquid and it looks kind of like snot back there, but the ear itself is not infected, it's not red, it's not swollen, it's not bulging, then we know, well, it could become an ear infection that needs antibiotics, but it's not there yet. So we might have some ideas for you to help clean some of that snot out of your ears, maybe by drinking more water, or maybe by using a decongestant, or even simple things like sleeping with one ear up so it can all drain. So we can look at what's happening, and that gives us the information we need to make an assessment. The assessment is what we know is going on. So for example, you have a bacterial ear infection, or you have an upper respiratory infection, a cold, with a lot of snot in your ear. Then the plan is what we're going to do about it. The plan is different depending on what the assessment is. So for an ear infection that needs antibiotics, the plan would be antibiotics. For an ear infection that doesn't, it might be nose sprays or antihistamines or humidifiers or drinking more water or any number of other things to try to get that snot out of your ear. Maybe some ibuprofen, maybe some Tylenol, all sorts of things. So that plan is going to be based on what your symptoms are, what you need, and then our assessment of what's causing them. So that's kind of the basic version of how doctors figure out what's wrong with you. Beyond that, if you have something a little bit more complicated or unusual, then there'd be more tests, blood work, imaging, things that we might do to get more clues and figure it out. Because doctors are essentially detectives. We take all the clues, we figure out what's going on, and then we have to decide what to do about it. It's one of the reasons I love being a doctor, because I loved mysteries when all the way back to Boxcar Children and Encyclopedia Brown. And then every time I still like reading mysteries. And being a doctor is just being a detective and solving mysteries with people's bodies. If you have a question for me and you're a current student, you can submit that under Ask Dr. Robin. And I look forward to answering some more questions.